Hello and welcome. Here is a short collection of summer reads, and I share these with you because these stories will weave their way into your summer, making it bearable if you are cold-blooded and enchanting if you are a typical summer lover. These stories reflect the lazy, bucolic summer days without the monotony or the stifling heat which weighs us down. Andre Akiman's Find Me. This book is the sequel to Call Me By Your Name, and it begins decades after the first book. As the title suggests, Find Me is about Elio and Oliver finding each other again. One of the most interesting aspects of the book is that it has only 4 chapters, and like Call Me By Your Name, this one also features Western classical music heavily, and it's a very beautiful blend of being a light read and having a philosophical element to it as well. And I say this because in the first chapter, we come across this conversation about love and time and love across time and space. And one of the central questions this book deals with is, when two people love each other, is the time they spend apart time wasted? Now, the reason why, of course, this question matters is because Elio and Oliver reunite after a very long time. And the question is that if they loved each other, then why were they living apart? The 4 chapters in the book deal with and are concerned with 4 different characters and 4 different perspectives. This book is not so much a story as it is a journal tracing the critical fragments or moments in the lives of Elio and Oliver which finally lead the two to reunite with each other. And these fragments range from emotions to introspections to conversations to actual events, physical events. The chapters skip time. Time is one of the most important themes of this chapter, like I said in the beginning, that the story traces love across space and time. This book reeks of quiet, of the privilege of having nothing to do, which is why it is appropriate for summer holidays when we are just lazing on the couch. It's too hot to do anything, too hot to eat anything. And it takes you to a different place, to a different world, to people who have a very different life from us. Another intriguing and significant aspect of the book is the idea of a romantic relationship and the 2 elements of romantic relationship, which is love, which are love and the physical expression or the physical manifestation of love. Both are given equal importance and both are dealt with fairly and justly. The book is erotic, but it doesn't seem vulgar. All the moments of physicality in the book, so to speak, appear to be an extension of the love between the characters, which is a very difficult feat to accomplish for a writer, to not break the barrier between the emotion of love and the physical expression of love. Usually books tend to weigh on either one side, but I think Andre Akiman has done justice to both the facets, both the elements of romantic love, which just adds to the beauty of the book. And it is a romantic book in the truest sense of the word, not only because it deals with love, but also because the way that it has dealt with the characters' interaction with their surroundings, animate or inanimate, is also romantic, also carries a lot of love, a lot of affection, a lot of emotion. It reeks of emotion and introspection. The focus is more on what the characters are thinking and feeling than on movement and action. It does not have that sense of urgency or volatility that is typical of an adventure book, because this isn't an adventure book. It's leisurely, and I would say it's quite old-fashioned in the narrative feel of the story. Now, those who are familiar with Donna Tartt's work know that her writing style honors and is an ode to lost decadence. And this book is no different, but that's only in terms of its writing style. This book is about a 12-year-old child. Her name is Harriet, and she is on the quest to uncover the mystery of her brother who was murdered when he was 7 years old and she was just a baby. So she's uncovering the murder mystery. She wants to avenge the murder of her brother, whom she has actually never met and has only seen photographs of. And this book is an adventure story. It reads like a modern retelling of a classic American adventure story. And it reminded me personally a lot of To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Although the issue that we are dealing with here, the unsolved murder of a 7-year-old boy, is a pretty serious one, the story reads like a childhood adventure because the quest to find out who murdered her brother and to punish the murderer began as a game. However, it slowly gradually it went down a very deep, dark road into and coincided with the Mississippi underworld. But we'll come to that later. If you like childhood adventure, if you like the feeling of childhood adventure, and if you liked adventure as a child, this book is going to be heavily nostalgic for you. It's going to remind you of the dynamics of childhood relationships and childhood friends. And another very crucial critical aspect in which this book differs from Donna Tartt's other works such as The Goldfinch or The Secret History is that even though this book follows the same writing style which honors all that is lost, all that has now decayed, and the journey of time through everything, the passage of time and how things and people change and grow old and possessions are lost over time. Although that has been a central theme of Donna Tartt's writing style, here this is explored through the lens of a child. And a child who is very intelligent, a child who is very witty and asks too many questions. And it also, of course, it is philosophical and deals with questions such as do actions always have consequences and all of that. But it also honors childhood. It reflects and it does justice to the emotions and the intensity of emotions that children feel, whether that is love or hate. And it reminds us of how we were as children and how we came to value something as a child. Harriet's obsession with this adventure, with this quest to find out who the murderer is and to punish the murderer, is actually a quest to understand where she's coming from, who she is. It could be interpreted like that. And it reminds us of how we placed value on something and how something lost its value in our eyes as children. One of the darker themes that this book deals with is death, which is also a common element in all of Tartt's books. Death is a constant undercurrent in The Secret History and even in The Goldfinch. But in The Little Friend, even though there is death, this death is seen, it is perceived through the eyes of a 12-year-old child, which is the twist. And it gives us an opportunity to understand and revisit our own childhood. Everything, no matter how sturdy it is, changes over time. It also challenges the idea that decay is ugly, that death is ugly. It doesn't have to be. The idea that something deteriorates is always taken to be as something that is repulsive, and we would like to avoid it, even aging. But that's something that this book counters because it adds beauty, and I don't want to use the word glorify because I don't think it glorifies decay and death, but it does reveal that that's the passage of time, that's the nature of time. Time works that way with respect to everything and everybody. There's a point of ascendance and there's a journey of ascendance, and there's a point after which everything descends and deteriorates. But this doesn't have to be something that we fight against and we look at it in a negative light. And this is why Donna Tartt's books carry so much beauty in them, carry such timelessness in them. And here too we see Harriet looking at the past, looking at when her brother was alive, looking at the photographs, looking at the lost splendor, the lost joy, the lost wealth of the Cleve family. And we get an insight into how she's looking at it. And through her, we get an insight, we get the opportunity to revisit our own childhood perceptions. And one of the most central aspects of the book is how children look at things and interpret and understand things. Like all of Donna Tartt's other works, The Little Friend is also an enchanting, hypnotic read. And if you've read the other two books, then I would definitely suggest that you read this one. If you haven't, then I would advise you to keep in mind that Donna Tartt is who I like to call an old-fashioned writer, because she's not in any hurry to end the story, to get to the moral of the story. She doesn't exaggerate, but there is a lot of extravagance in her book. Her books are very rich, very lush, and filled with anecdotes and details that help you to enrich your understanding of the story. And it's extremely deep and filled with imagery. The Little Friend also reads like this magnificent tumble-down mansion that you've come across somewhere, with its interiors and furniture intact, but waiting to be reclaimed or buried. As the title suggests, this book is about intimacy between people. But a shocking reality that this book brings to light is that not all intimacies are a deliberate choice. And what is the cost of intimacy? What is the cost of getting too close to someone? I would not call this a dark read, but I will definitely say that it is heavy. It doesn't feel like it when we begin reading it in the first maybe 2-3 chapters, but slowly the tension builds up. This book is about a woman who moves to Hague as an interpreter in the International Court. Now, it's not, to those who know, the court might sound very familiar to the International Court of Justice, which is actually located in The Hague. But the one in the story is just supposed to be an imitation of it, not an actual reference to it, and does not refer to any of its actual proceedings or anything. So the interpreter moves to The Hague from New York, and she has a lover in Hague whose name is Adrian. Now there are two different categories of intimacies that she shares. One is with Adrian, who is her lover, who is her romantic partner, and the other is with a man she's interpreting at the court. This man happens to be a war criminal and the former president of a country. And the intimacy that she develops with the man she is interpreting is through language. In the process of interpreting for him, there is a communication that takes place between them. It's not a verbal communication, it's an intuitive understanding of him, of what he is implying, what he's not saying, what his actions, what his gestures, what his moods are. And this is not an intimacy that she actually wants to develop, that she wants to carry, but it's something that just happened and she has no control over it. And what is the cost of this intimacy? What does the knowledge of this man, over and above the knowledge that everybody else has of him, do to her? It's a psychological book. There is not a lot of movement because the story is located, fixed, restricted to the sterile city of Hague. But even though geographically the story is limited, there are conversations about what is happening in the rest of the world, such as Brexit. And another one of the important themes that this book deals with is the intrusion of the political into the personal. This is a deeply political book precisely because it captures this fusion of the personal and the political, which we in reality are so immune to, not because we don't care about it, but because the political is so deeply embedded and entrenched in our private lives that we don't even realize it anymore. And that is something that this book makes us think about. There are these little events that are happening here and there that seemed so distant from the interpreter, but she is concerned about them and they do have an impact on her. An interesting feature of this book is that the narrator, the protagonist, the interpreter is nameless in the book. Throughout the book, she has no name. I'm assuming that the reason why Katie Vitamura did this is because somehow this interpreter is reflective of everybody else in the world. Because the way that the interpreter goes about her life seems to be very mundane and very monotonous. That is why I said that the tension is not palpable in the very beginning itself. The tension in the book grips us out of nowhere, suddenly. And it is so strong and so powerful that it shocks us. Because we don't expect it to be so powerfully quiet, but that is what this book is. It lulls you into this sense of monotony in the first 3 chapters, 4 chapters. And then slowly you find yourself unable to put the book down. I finished this book in 2 days. And I would highly, highly recommend that everybody pick this book up and give it a try. The reason why I included it in a summer read list is because this book is a quick read, but it also leaves us with a lot to think about, which is what makes it perfect and appropriate to read during the summer holidays. This is a quietly powerful book, and I would highly, highly recommend it to polyglots, to those who like Scandinavian countries, to those who are interested in politics, and of course, intimacy. I know that To Kill a Mockingbird has been discussed enough, from English classes to online book clubs, but I could not leave this book out. Not only because it is a classic, but also because to me this book reeks of summer. The story is set in a fictional Alabama town named Maycomb, and it's the story of a girl. I think she's 6 when the story opens. Her name is Scout Finch. She has an older brother, Jem, and along with her 3rd friend named Dill, she begins to narrate the story of how her brother Jem broke his arm. And there are 2 important points to remember in the series of events which led to the broken arm. One, that the children were deeply fascinated, like all children, by this house, by this neighbor of theirs named Boo Radley, who apparently never came out of the house. In all their life, the children had never seen the man. They had only heard horror stories of him. He was older to them, of course, much, much older, and they knew that he's in the house, but he just never came out. So the children were very fascinated by it. And they regarded the house as something haunted and intriguing, and they wanted to go inside and see it. So the story begins with their attempts to somehow draw Boo Radley out of the house. The second event is a much more mature, serious event that shocks the whole town. A white girl is taken advantage of by a black man, and the accused black man is being defended by Atticus Finch, Scout and Jem's father. Now this story is a story of childhood, a story of childhood games, but it's also a political story because it deals with racial inequality. But again, the difference between this story and the other stories on racial inequality is that this is looked at from the perspective of a child. And when I first read this book, it was so strange to me, it was so fascinating and intriguing that such sensitive topics were dealt with so simply, so in a manner that children could also understand. And that is why I recommend this book, and I think I'm going to keep recommending this book, especially in summer, because the essence of this book is very familiar to the essence of summer. Dusty roads, playing on dusty roads in a small Alabama town with very limited gains, no technology. And it also reveals, again, like The Little Friend, To Kill a Mockingbird also deals with childhood relationships and dynamics, and there's such an innocence to it. But again, the difference between To Kill a Mockingbird and The Little Friend is that this book reaffirms childhood innocence, and The Secret History looks at the passion that children have, the intensity with which they love and hate both, their impulsiveness. But here, their stubbornness, their impulsiveness usually ends up being for good causes rather than bad. Apart from the fact that it's a political story, it's delightful to read. While we are reading it, it never feels like it's a political story. It never feels like it's trying to impart a moral value. And that is why this book is recommended to students. Because at the very foundation of it, it's the story of what happened to three children over the course of 3 years from, I think, 1933 to 1935. And with that, we bring this brief encounter to a close. Thank you so much for watching. Do subscribe if you found it helpful. I hope you enjoyed these. If you've read them before, please let me know what you thought of them. I'll see you next time.